Neurodiversity at school. Humans are neurodiverse. We vary a great deal in how our brains work. This has always been true. For as long as there have been humans, people have thought differently from each other. Neurodiversity is a complex topic. Simplified introduction here. Neurodiversity, as defined by LEANS, is the fact that all human beings vary in the way our brains take in and process information. Thus, across any group of people, we have different experiences and behave in different ways. Information processing is a big concept that includes things like understanding language, paying attention and ignoring things, remembering, knowing where you are in space, moving your body, and many more that affect our daily experiences and learning. It may have been even more true in our evolutionary past. Homo sapiens, after all, existed for a long time alongside Neanderthals and other hominids, and we know that our species interbred. We can only speculate about the ways that our ancestors may have processed the world differently from modern humans or from each other, but it seems likely that our diversity of cognitive styles made us more adaptable and resilient as a species. Other species are also known to be neurodiverse. Individual animals show great variation in how willing they are to take risks, for example, and how they respond to novel experiences. This diversity helps them to find new niches while making the most of their existing situations. Modern societies have contradictory attitudes to this diversity. We celebrate geniuses, but persecute those who don't fit in. We grow up with stories about people who see things differently from those around them, noticing things that others miss, going to places that others don't go. But at school, people are bullied by their peers and punished by their teachers for showing those same qualities. In short, we celebrate nonconformity while demanding conformity. Every school and every classroom is neurodiverse, but teachers sometimes act as if we haven't noticed it. We know that different students learn different things at different rates, that different teaching styles work for different students, and that some students benefit greatly from things which others don't care about. Some students might need movement breaks. Others might benefit from access to STEM toys. Others might need all instructions in writing. The more that teachers recognise these differing needs, the better they can make the classroom learning environment for all their students, not just those with official diagnoses. For all of these reasons, neurodiversity is a concept that every teacher should take on board. However, there is also another dimension to this. Neurodivergent pupils often face social exclusion and bullying at school, and sometimes other pupils think the adjustments they get because of their disabilities look like unfair advantages. It's these attitudes that the LEANS project focuses on. Young children are often wonderfully accepting of differences. Not knowing what to expect, there's little that really surprises them. Dragons? Great! Fairies? Delightful! Autistic people? Okay, sure. Different races? Neat! Unfortunately, as kids get a bit older, they often start to absorb messages from adults around them about which kinds of people are acceptable and who is to be reviled or feared. They form in-groups and out-groups, and start to look down on people who don't fit with their norms and standards. We hope that by learning about neurodiversity at school, some of these harmful attitudes can be countered before they really take hold. The LEANS project was started by Sue Fletcher-Watson, a psychologist at the University of Edinburgh with a track record of working with and listening to autistic and other neurodivergent people. She discussed it with me as her official autistic mentor. I'm also a school science teacher. And together with a few of her colleagues in psychology, we worked out what the priorities would be for this project and what we collectively meant by neurodiversity. We talked through Sue's rough plan for how the project would proceed. We hired a postdoc, Alyssa Alcorn, from a seriously impressive field of candidates. And then we set about pulling together a neurodiverse design team from across the UK and Ireland to collaborate on the content for the project. We wanted people with a range of experience in education: teachers, teaching assistants, educational psychologists, and so on, from a range of backgrounds and with a range of cognitive styles. Not everyone on the team was neurodivergent. It was neurodiverse in the true sense, with a few neurotypical people and others with various kinds of neurodivergence. Through a series of online discussions, the team worked out the kinds of activities and resources that ought to be included in LEANS. Alyssa pulled their ideas together into draft materials, and we shared a questionnaire for feedback on the definitions being used, the learning objectives of each section, and so on. We had more than 100 responses from a mix of neurodivergent adults, teachers, and parents, many of whom fell into more than one of those categories, almost all of whom were quite familiar with the idea of neurodiversity. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So, who is LEANS for? The first thing to say is that teachers using LEANS in class are not required or expected to know much about neurodiversity already. The goal is for any primary school teacher working with children between the ages of 8 and 11 to be able to pick up the LEANS resources and learn what they need to deliver these lessons. In fact, we're hoping that many teachers who don't already know about neurodiversity will pick this up and learn about it themselves. As a side effect, teaching about something is often the best way to learn about it. And for all the reasons I discussed in the first part of this talk, it could be extremely beneficial if more teachers understood neurodiversity. The main focus of LEANS is on pupils' learning, though. We hope that by teaching kids about neurodiversity, we can reduce the stigma associated with neurodivergence or learning difficulties, increase acceptance and inclusion, and help students to understand both their own minds and those of their classmates. Increasing knowledge has been shown to be an effective way of reducing stigma, and having the vocabulary to talk about differences makes constructive conversations possible that people just can't have if they don't have the right words. A key point here is that neurodiversity includes everyone. We all have different perspectives on things, different needs, whether or not we have labels for our differences, like autism or dyspraxia. Almost everyone could benefit from thinking more about their own needs and how to get them met. That means understanding our place within neurodiversity and learning how to advocate for ourselves, even if we're lucky enough to be in a society or a school where we get most of our needs met easily. Diagnostic labels often come with stigma and stereotypes attached, but kids who don't have a diagnosis may not be viewed any more positively. Neurodivergent learners are often labelled as slow, uncooperative, lazy, or naughty. These are all labels which seem to blame the child for the difficulties they face at school, and none of them actually explains very much. They announce that a child is deficient and suggest that they just need to try harder, rather than acknowledging how hard school might be for them and suggesting strategies for dealing with the barriers which are making it so. With a better understanding of how and why different students experience school differently, perhaps everyone involved might be able to find better ways of working with them. So, what are the LEANS materials? LEANS is designed as a series of 7 units to be delivered to classes in mainstream primary schools for about 1 or 2 hours a week over the course of a school term, about 12 weeks. Various resources are provided for each unit, including stories, class activities, videos and posters. The stories are all set at a fictional school named Bubbleburn Primary with a diverse cast of characters. Hearing about a cast of fictional characters allows teachers and learners to think about processing differences at a personal level without having to talk about members of their own class, which could be very exposing for children. The narrative structure also helps tie ideas together, and hopefully it makes for a fun experience for learners. Unit 1 is an introduction to neurodiversity. Pupils meet many of the central ideas that are explored in greater depth throughout the rest of LEANS. That everyone's brain is different, in small ways and sometimes big ways. That some of those differences have names, like dyspraxia or ADHD. That we can all make each other's lives easier by respecting those differences. Pupils play a game of would you rather to get them thinking about some of the differences in the ways they experience the world. Like, would you rather do your homework while smelling a mouldy cheese or while wearing a scratchy jumper? That leads them on to the first of many structured discussions. An animated video introduces the concept of neurodiversity with reference to a diverse woodland, an environment that makes it easier for some trees to thrive than others, but which is much improved by having a variety of trees. Unit 2 digs deeper into the idea that different people think and learn differently, that we vary in how we use our attention, how we remember things, how we understand things, and so on. This means that different people have very different experiences of school, even if they're in the same classroom trying to learn the same things. It also means that what one person finds hard might be easy for someone else, and things that are really helpful for one person might be useless for someone else. Some people need adjustments like extra time or technology to be able to access learning in the same way as the rest of the class. Unit 3 is all about communication and understanding. It's the longest unit because communication is so central to so many people's experiences of neurodivergence, and there are so many misunderstandings of this. Dyslexia is often seen as a disorder of written communication, when there's so much more to it than that. Autism is also seen as being centrally about communication. Autistic people are thought to have impaired communication abilities and difficulty empathizing with other people, when non-autistic people have just as much trouble communicating and empathizing with us. Communication is a two-way process, and most of the difficulty autistic people have with it results from our differences in information processing and communication styles, almost like we're talking a different language. Autistic people often communicate very effectively with each other. This unit features activities that get kids to really think about how misunderstandings arise in verbal and non-verbal communication. Unit 4 is on the theme of getting along together at school and dives into the differences between wants and needs. A particularly important point here is the existence of conflicting needs, where what one person needs clashes with what someone else needs. I remember when I'd only been teaching for a year or two, there was a craze for fidget spinners at school. Some kids found that spinning one of these really helped them focus at school, but for others, the sound and the movement made it impossible for them to work. My school ended up banning them, which was a shame, but It was a good opportunity to talk about the value of fidget toys and some of the difficulties of reconciling conflicting needs. Quieter STEM toys, like Tangles, can meet the same need to fidget without disturbing the rest of the class. Unit 5 follows nicely from that. It talks about fairness and unfairness. People often see the help that disabled people get at school or at work and think it's special treatment, without understanding how unfair the system is for them without it. At the same time, teachers are often reluctant to allow students these adjustments, even when there is no real harm in doing so. Unit 6 is about friendships and other relationships, like being someone's classmate. There are so many ways to be a friend or a good classmate. If we talked about that more, maybe not so many neurodivergent people would be isolated. Unit 7 consolidates what we learned in the first 6 units, putting it all together, thinking about what it all means and what we might want to do differently now that we understand these things better. I believe that LEANS can play a major role in how classrooms of the future can be made more inclusive. And I hope that it triggers productive conversations at home and at work too. Having the language we need to speak about varying experiences and needs can help us to solve many of the problems that make work and family life difficult for neurodivergent folk and those around them. People often have no idea that they are doing things which affect some people very badly. People often make harmful assumptions which they may never question. Spending some time learning about and reflecting on how very differently people experience the world can help to avoid that. LEANS is just one resource for helping people to see things from perspectives they would never have considered, and to understand how different those perspectives are and why that's a good thing. I also encourage everybody, but especially teachers, to read writing by neurodivergent people. Too many people still think they can learn all they need to know about autism, for example, by reading things written by people with no experience of being autistic themselves. Not enough work by neurodivergent writers has been translated into different languages. But I know that, for example, Elle McNichol's A Kind of Spark has been translated into Korean as Spark, among other languages. It tells the story of an autistic girl from Scotland who finds it heartbreaking to learn of the witch trials, when women who didn't fit in, like her, were persecuted and killed. This level of injustice might be unusual in the modern world, but too many people are still punished for being different. LEANS so far exists only in English, but there are guidelines on the website for translating it into other languages, and a Dutch translation is already underway. I hope that many more translations will follow. Neurodivergent people in English-speaking countries have benefited hugely from being able to learn from each other. But language barriers have made the spread of ideas to and from other parts of the world much harder. The diversity of the world's languages and cultures presents barriers to understanding, just as the diversity of our brains does. But both make the world a far richer place. So let's all work together towards greater understanding and appreciation. There is so much that we can learn from each other.